Welcome to Second Take, the show that takes a look at the issues behind the news. South Africa will resume its procurement of renewable energy this month after a 6-year stall. Terence joins me to discuss the outlook for the markets. Hi Terence.
Hi Chanel.
At one stage, South Africa was being held up as a global leader in renewables procurement. Is that still the case?
Yes, when we started in around 2010, 2011, we were one of the early adopters of the reverse auction style bidding process. Prior to that, there had been a lot of feed-in tariffs. We did look at a feed-in tariff structure, and we decided it was going to be quite expensive to procure energy in that basis. And also it wasn't sort of market sensitive. So we opened up the market to a bidding process, the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program was launched in around 2010, 2011. And the first bids were naturally very high because it was a market testing almost experiment. But over the years, over the number of bidding rounds, and went up to bid window 4 for utility scale renewable energy procurement, the prices came down quite dramatically, and there was a lot of market appetite, and it was seen as a good framework. And we've seen since the rest of the world adopt the auction model. So just about everyone now uses the auction model, and we're seeing some incredible prices coming out from all over the world, whether it's Latin America, whether it's the Middle East, whether it's Australia. Really, we're seeing some really good prices as a result, and that's helped drive down solar and wind prices in particular. So South Africa was seen as a pioneer in this area, but then we had this period from about 2015. So our last procurement was 2014. From 2015, Eskom made it clear that it was not really accommodative of signing new power purchase agreements with renewable energy RPPs, and that led to this breakdown and stall till about 2018, when eventually those projects that were legally procured back in 2014 were eventually signed and reached financial close, and we're seeing those projects now entering into operation from bid window 4 of the renewable energy procurement. So yes, we were a leader, we were a pioneer, but I think our credibility is shot now, and we're going to have to rebuild it.
What commitments have been made as South Africa gets set to resume its IPP programs?
Well, I think the main commitment, I think that's going to be important for market appetite and to rebuild that credibility, is that we're going to have back-to-back procurement. So there's already visibility. Minister Gwede Mantashe has announced that the first, the bid window 5 will resume in March. So we're in that month, so the bidding document should be emerging any time now. And then we'll have another bidding round later in the year, around August, for the next, for bid window 6, if it carries on in that format. And then there'll be a further one in early 2022, so March 2022. So you have now visibility of a rolling back-to-back type procurement program, and I think that's an important commitment. It is very much aligned with the integrated resource plan and ministerial determinations that have both been published. We've been somewhat slow off the mark because these projects that we're going to be procuring, they're going to take some time to build. And if you look at the integrated resource plan, we needed to be starting to add 1,600 megawatts of wind a year from this year, and 1,000 megawatts of solar. There is a gap in the solar side, but a yearly tempo of adding that, and to add that in line with what the integrated resource plan needs and what we know the economy needs, because we're energy short. We are slightly late off the mark, or we're actually very late off the mark, but at least now I think there's a commitment that we're going to have these back-to-back procurement rounds, and we can see that the capacity to do that is starting to be restored at the RPP office. There has been a delay, I think, with the risk mitigation, the emergency procurement program, but that, again, we're going to start seeing preferred bids or preferred projects announced this month, and I think we'll then establish a steady state tempo, hopefully.
What will potential investors be looking out for in the new bidding documents?
I think for any change from bid window 4, remember that was all the way back in 2014 when we did the last procurement round. What are the changes? They're going to be going through the bid documents to understand what they are, and also what the demands, I think very much, we know there'll be demands around transformation, black empowerment, But I think what the demands will be around local content, I think will be given a lot of attention, because by 2014 we had established something of an industry here that was supplying into the solar and wind markets in particular. We remember we had that large wind tower plant that was built by DCD in Kucha, which has since been dismantled, auctioned off, because we've had this big gap of 6 years where there was no demand for wind towers until eventually in 2018 we started building those projects that we procured back in 2014. So capacity has been lost. So government wants local content, obviously, but I think there's going to have to be some sort of realization that that capacity has to be rebuilt around both the solar and the wind supply chains over a period, and it probably can't just be a big bang from the get-go. But I think that will be a major focus for developers as they look at tendering for this bid window 5. What are the local content thresholds?
What is the potential for industrialisation around these programs?
That's the sad thing. I mean, we were building up a capacity around this build program. There was a feeling, there was visibility of a sort of a long horizon for solar and wind in South Africa, and then there was the stop, and that has led to a credibility gap in the procurement program. It's also lowered the risk appetite, or it's raised the risk for OEMs that were looking to invest in South Africa. So I think we need to re-establish our credibility through a very well-run bid window 5, and I think we need to have an incremental raising of the local content thresholds. There's no doubt that at 1,600 megawatts a year of wind and it's 1,000 megawatts a year of solar, because even though there's a gap in the procurement in the RP for solar, there's that whole distributed generation column in the table 5 in the RP, which we see that distributed generation market now starting to get a wake-up call. We've got the regulation, the regulatory environment looks like there's going to be some easing there. We know that, for instance, large mining companies all have solar PV ambitions. We see Sasol's got a major aspiration of 900 megawatts of solar PV to be installed by 2030. So there is this demand side that is growing. So around that, we should be able to develop an industrial capacity. The South African Renewable Energy Master Plan has not been drafted yet. There is a lot of activity behind the scenes in getting that drafted, and we have to look at where is the low-hanging fruit, because ultimately what South Africa needs is more energy and more cost-effective energy. We don't want to overburden the developers through different thresholds that are not really realistic, and by focusing on maybe components that really in the long run you're not going to be competitive to produce. There's a lot of there's unlikely that we're going to be, for instance, producing solar panels and compete at a competitive level versus China. So where else in the solar PV supply chain should be focused, and what are the low-hanging fruits? I think there are a number of low-hanging fruits both in wind and solar, but we need to firm that up and get a compact around that through the master plan. And I think the draft master plan hopefully will also be out in March. So it shouldn't really shape bid window 5. The bid window 5, I think, needs to run almost very similarly as bid window 4 did, unfortunately with less capacity, local capacity to supply because of the hiatus. But I think from bid window 6 and then 7 and then 8 and then 9, I think we should be seeing a rising ambition around local content, and that is going to provide a stimulus along with what's happening in the distributed generation market around mines, smelters, factories, household rooftop solar on your house. There's a big potential market to start supplying into. So hopefully we can build a whole industry around these wind and solar supply chains.
Thank you. That's the Second Take show for this week. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time for more news analysis. Also, don't forget to listen to the audio version of our Engineering News Daily email newsletter.